Okay.
Good morning. Welcome to Silver Solutions Show. Our mission is to bring information to seniors and disabled adults and their family caregivers about healthy aging and long-term care. We've had a radio show on WRMN for I think about 5 years now, and this has kind of been the goal, and we continue that goal on the Silver Solutions Show today. Our co-hosts today are Jim Wojciechowski and I'm Kathy Wetters, and our topic today is going to be grief and COVID-19. In the May 13th online edition of Psychiatric Times, I did a little research before our show, and I came across, I thought this was really a different angle, an insightful article by about the pandemic called Care for the Soul, and a doctor, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, a Dr. Ronald Pies, MD, he wrote this article about care for the soul. And the main point that he makes is about the current pandemic has unsettled our souls in ways that we're just beginning to understand. We're sort of just beginning to unwrap, what this means to us and how it's making us feel, even though we're in phase 3 or 4, whatever we're in now in Illinois. Just as the COVID virus attacks our respiratory system, the pandemic assaults our soul in 5 different ways. And he talks about these 5 different ways. And I thought, this makes a lot of sense.
Oh boy, and it does. And being serving our senior community, I think we see and feel that even with our clients and even our caregiver community, the people that just the backbone of our company, people that go out and help seniors. First item is impotence. The doctor recounts the story of an Italian woman in a small town whose husband, age 85, had just died from the coronavirus. 5 days later, his body still lay in a coffin. As the local cemetery was closed and traditional funeral services were prohibited throughout the country. As I'm reading this, I have visions of that poor lady on TV in New York where her husband was outside one of the hospitals in New York in a refrigerated truck for 7 days.
Oh boy!
So, and she, she was heartbroken. And just in total grief. So anyway, the man's wife of 50 years struggled to explain her feelings. It's not anger, she said, it's impotence in the face of this virus, inability to act, helplessness. And this is exactly what that woman showed on TV. It was just, there was no way to finalize her husband's life,
right,
because there was no closure. So, the second item is grief. The pandemic brings a multi-pronged attack that may overwhelm our ability to handle the grief. People are mourning lost jobs. Here in the United States, 40 million people are without jobs, lost savings, lost security. Look how many small businesses are never going to reopen again.
Right.
Senior citizens, and this is the important ones, and I can't imagine as a fan, as someone who loves seniors, I'm thinking of my mom and dad. If they were locked down in a nursing home and have you aren't able to visit them. So not only are the seniors who are being taken care of struggling, but their families who love them want to be with them. All the pleasures we take for granted and all the conveniences of life, as we knew it, just disappeared. And the loss of what we imagined were our relatively safe, stable, and protective lives. Boy, and that has gone to the wayside with a lot of things that are going on today, not only COVID.
Jim,
And then the third, yeah.
let me ask you something. I don't know if you saw it on online, an article about a local skilled nursing facility. I won't say the one because it would be fair to them, but it was an article from the about this subject from the family perspective, the medical staff perspective, and even the medical director's perspective. But they showed pictures and told stories about families who actually, and I know families that go to many skilled nursing facilities and other facilities that stand at the window and try to communicate with their loved ones, many who have COVID-19 and don't have a good diagnosis. It just broke your heart reading that article. It really did.
Oh, I can imagine. And I do a lot of unfortunately sitting on the TV after work and watching news from 5 o'clock until 10 o'clock. Some things did touch my heart during this time of people using creative ways to help the seniors in long-term care facilities where they went outside and sang for grandma or mom, and the whole complex was there. So, the third thing is the loneliness that people must feel. Both, we said something about this already. The loneliness of not only the families, but especially the person that is being cared for in a nursing home or long-term care facility, or even at home.
Especially at home.
And we're sitting at home. I'm turning 65, and I'm a little bit overweight, so I'm a little bit careful of who I see and who I'm around. And I think in the last 6 weeks, saw my grandson twice.
Oh, Jim.
Yeah, so this thing has just really shown the loneliness of people. The doctor says for those without family, friends, or supportive community, the ensuing sense of loneliness, sometimes accompanied by feelings of abandonment. You can understand that.
Yep.
They become overwhelming. All those social connections via internet are often helpful. I mean, look at us today.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Zoom came along. There have been other platforms out there that have been helpful. I know right at home, we use these platforms for our clients, for our caregiver interviews at times, just to help with the social distancing. And they've been great. But you know what? Just like when I saw you, we were so happy to see each other doing the radio show.
Yep.
It was great to see you there in person.
Yes.
I can't wait to hug you again. Although social connections via internet are often helpful, they are no substitute to embrace, as I just said, a friend or a loved one.
Yeah. Jim, how many times, I can't count the times I've stuck out my hand to shake it somebody, and then I had to pull it back. It's like, oh no, can't do that.
You have to get permission now. Now there are some brave people, and I'm still pretty much one of them. Those who will allow me to hug them, I will give them a hug. So.
That's nice. That's nice. Another thing he mentions is mistrust, and boy, do I relate to this one. You know, we have the scientists that first said don't need a mask. Now we're supposed to wear a mask all the time when we're out in public. So all this, we're all over the block about what conventional wisdom from the experts, and sometimes you just don't know what to believe, and so you get mistrustful, unfortunately.
That is unbelievable. That's one of the most frustrating things about this whole thing is that it seems like every day the same expert comes out and says a totally different 180-degree turn on what to do or how to be careful.
Mhm.
So,
Right. Right. So the author says, during the present pandemic, the kind of mistrust that can spread pandemic-like it can spread over a whole life. The vulnerable person may begin to start to wonder, and boy, do I feel some of these.
mhm.
How can I trust that I will have enough food for the next few months? We're fortunate on that, in that way, but many are not. And I think about, the Chicago public school system that's been continuing on with, giving out food, even though the school's not open, meals, and how important that is for folks who really, need it. Or will I still be able to get medical care if I get sick? Or even if I need medical care, do I want a chance going, I don't even know what the deal is about, emergency rooms now. I'm sure they have protocols they're following if you feel like you need to have imminent help. And then how can I trust the person next to me who may be carrying and spreading the virus? You become mistrust of everyone kind of in your immediate personal space. How can I trust myself since I might unknowingly infect my children or spouse? And we went to see, and I've told you, Jim, about our new granddaughter, Amelia. We were going to see her over the Memorial Day holiday. And so I made a hard decision for me, given our business, to kind of stay out of commission for 10 days before I went, because I just did not want a chance I could be like, asymptomatic and give it to her or my son or my daughter-in-law. And that really weighed on me a great deal. If that were to happen, it would be devastating all around. And still, and then it gives you, the bottom line is I have no control over my life. A lot of people feel that way right now.
Exactly. I mean, you go to the store and somebody coughs and it's like everybody hits the floor.
Right. Everybody wonders. Yeah. And then another thing is, hang on, I'm ill prepared. Let me get my power cord. One moment.
So
Of all the days to not have the power cord, there we go. We got it now.
A little bit of technical difficulty, but that's okay.
All right. Sorry about that. We're newbies at this particular aspect. Okay, cool. He's talking about displacement, but when you get to reading down in the article, he's talking about existential displacement. He refers to losing one's customary and valued position, role, or status in life. And he mentions, thousands of people have been displaced from their jobs or their accustomed roles, like a teacher who's, bereft of being with their students in their class, pastors that are bereft from having in-person church services with their congregation, the nurse or physician that's infected with the coronavirus and quarantine is suddenly deprived of their liberty, their power, the control, the immense privilege that they have of caring for others. And him as a doctor, I'm sure that he and many he knew felt this way intensely. And he said, suddenly the doctor is a patient, vulnerable, passive, and sometimes powerless. It's a need to find your place in the world. And that kind of sums it up for a lot of us is, your place in the world, you begin to question, what and how long can I keep this place, even if I feel like I have my place, in the world. This is, what if I get struck down tomorrow with it, or my loved one does, and I took it to them or whatnot. It's quite daunting thought. So he has some really good, thoughtful advice, I thought, Dr. Pies. He ends the article by discussing healing the soul during and after COVID-19. And some people, find comfort in religion, and I know you could speak to that, Jim.
Absolutely. In fact, we're going. There's a lot of frustration. You hear it you hear it on the news. We want to get together and glorify God as a body, and we can't do it. Actually, what's going on now is, and we need Him today. We feel so disconnected not being able to get together as a body. Zoom again has been great. but we're now taking a survey at church, and right now about 65 to 70% of our members want to get back as soon as possible.
A lot of congregations are re-examining that issue, wanting to do the prudent thing for everyone, but then still feeling the need to, to be together. Sure. The author says gratitude during trying times has allowed him personally to reduce his stress and anxiety. He points out what many of us feel. He's grateful for his family, his friends. He's grateful for the heroic efforts of overworked medical professionals. The power of gratitude is nicely summed up, and he quotes Buddha, or what has been attributed to Buddha. It says, "Let us rise up and be thankful, for if we didn't learn a lot, we learned a little at least. And if we learned a little, or we didn't, if we learned a little, and if we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't get sick. And if we got sick, at least we didn't die. So let us all be thankful." So
that's a great way to look at it.
Let's all be thankful in all things is what I took away from that.
That's exactly right.
And for some, the care of the soul may involve therapeutic use of music, poetry, or literature. I know my husband Brian is leading a kind of a Zoom Sunday school series on the poetry of Robert Frost. And I hadn't thought about it until reading this article, how it really is, poetry is something that's soothing to us in many ways. He quotes Thomas More, who describes how when we are feeling melancholic, the best strategy may involve going to the darkness rather than fighting it, especially with music. He says, sometimes just a sad song or, can speak to our emotions and help the dynamics of grief and sadness kind of come through. I know, this is odd. I give you odd. Sometimes I start to miss the old gospel songs, of my youth when I grew up in a cappella singing, and I'll go on the internet and find some old gospel songs and listen to them, and tears will come to my eyes sometime, and it's just funny how music speaks to us with gladness and sadness.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
A lot of times, he talks about poetry is the right tone.
Amen.
We talked about that. And he talked about when he was a resident at a hospital, a psychiatric resident, how he led a therapy group. And he said, what they learned was, what they asked the participants to bring their own poetry or poetry that spoke to them and to talk about it and encourage them to talk about their feelings, their memories, whatnot. He said one thing to always to avoid, though, was the poem need to offer some hope, not reinforce the despair or depression they have, which is a good point. So he concluded that the important things from this ordeal, and there's a lot of them, is a sense in which our souls, when we come out of it, hopefully will grow stronger, wiser, and deeper through this trial. What's that saying? What doesn't kill us will make us stronger or whatnot. And he quotes Rabbi Manis Friedman, which I think this is good, who says sometimes it is good to be reminded that we have not mastered the universe. We think, as humans, we've got all the answers. This has taught us we do not have all the answers.
If we've learned anything, it's none of us are experts at anything.
Right.
We might think we are, but we don't have all the answers. You're absolutely right.
It's made us humble. Yep.
Yep. So,
so time for our commercial break. Yep.
Oh, is it our commercial break? Where is it?
Yeah.
Oh, here it is.
There you go. Yep, you got it.
The Silver Solution Show is sponsored by Right at Home. Getting older shouldn't mean giving up all the things that we love to do. It just means, finding a new way to do them, as we're doing every day today.
That's right.
Right at Home's professional team thoughtfully selects caregivers to provide help with personal needs, housekeeping, meal preparation, and companionship. Our goal is to improve your quality of life each day. We can provide the right care at Right at Home. Call us today at 877-ELDER99. That's 877-353-3799.
So Another article I came across when researching the topic was from the Harvard Business Review, and I believe it was dated March 23rd. So that was kind of, I guess, in the middle of our lockdown period, looking back on it.
Yeah, well, it's kind of early now, so
Yeah, kind of early, early
kind of
stages.
early on, yeah.
And I thought it was, insightful that the group kind of tackled some of these topics at that time. Because we thought at first it was going to be like a 14-day thing. We're going to be back out of it, right? So
Yeah.
different, yeah. So the group from Harvard Business Review were meeting with a David Kessler. And those of you that are not familiar with him, he is a grief expert, and he actually co-wrote a book with Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross on grief and grieving, finding the meaning of grief through the 5 stages of loss. And then with the permission of her family, he took on it weighed on his heart that he felt like there was a 6th stage of grief, and he wrote a book, Finding Meaning, the 6th stage of grief, 6th stage of grief. David Kessler is the author. And so they asked him some questions, which I really thought were really good questions. One question was, people are feeling a number of things right now. Is it right to call what they're feeling grief? And obviously he said, yes, there are. And he said, if you think about it, it's like after 9/11, the first time we went to an airport and got on a plane, we didn't feel normal. We got some of the similar things we felt. With the loss of normalcy, the fear of economic toll we're feeling right now, the loss of connection with others, which we've already talked about, it's hitting us hard and we're grieving. So this is collective grief for our country, for the world right now. And so it's all quite normal to say, yes, we are grieving. And he said there's more than one kind of grief, and he talks about anticipatory grief. And I know some in our family would always kid sometime about my mom that she was only happy when she was only happy as her kind of her child that was struggling. She was only as happy as they were, because she was always anticipating the bad thing that might happen coming out of it, and she was a warrior, a professional warrior, which, loved her for it. So it says our primitive mind knows something bad is happening, but we can't see it. We're feeling the loss of safety, which we are all feeling now. Individually or smaller groups, people feel this, but all together, this is new for our society. This is kind of uncharted ground for us. We talk about the 1918 pandemic that hit around World War I. There's been in history all kind of things, but
there was the Spanish flu, right?
Yeah, the Spanish flu. But for us today that are living, this is all brand new for us, for sure.
Oh, what's interesting to view, so in fact, I have to say some of our older citizens are actually handling this better than a lot of our younger citizens.
Yes.
Because they haven't been through, our older citizens have been through crisis. Though probably none have been through the Spanish flu. If so, very few. Okay, but they've been through still world wars. While we're going through it right now, we're having riots and stuff like that. Our young people they're having a hard time watching this, and they're very insecure.
Right, used to, and he gives an example of anticipatory grief that we could relate back to, like if you got a bad diagnosis from the doctor or a family member with a bad diagnosis, or when you're younger and your parents are alive, you that dread that comes over you from time to time is, what am I going to do when they're gone? And so we kind of have anticipatory grief in other settings, but this is kind of a collective anticipatory grief. He talks about, that's what he's talking about. What does the future hold? We think about, it centers on death usually. Yeah.
Sure.
Yep. So he said understanding the stages of grief is a start, but when he talks about the stages of grief, I have to remind people that the stages aren't linear and they don't always happen in order, and it's not a roadmap. Sometimes you progress and you go forward and backward, forward and backward. He said there's denial, which we say a lot early on. The virus won't affect us. That's like, we're going to be out of this in 14 days. We'll be back at our life. That was a denial I kind of personally felt. There's anger. You're making me stay home and take away my activities. There's bargaining. Okay, if I social distance for 2 weeks, everything will be better, right? There's sadness. I don't know when this will end. And finally, there's acceptance, which is, this is happening. I have to figure out how to proceed. And I guess that's where we are now in the stage, I feel, is we're in acceptance. It's here. It's the second day of June, and we're at acceptance. And he says acceptance, as you might imagine, is where the power lies. We find control in acceptance. I can wash my hands. I can keep a safe distance. I can learn how to work virtually. So that was, I thought really a good place for him to kind of sum up the stages of grief and how we may be feeling through each of those stages as we went along.
That is absolutely true. Once you accept something, you start using your creative mind to figure things out, figure a different way to do things. Like, we all here right at home love Kathy because she's our technical advisor and expert. Okay, she's put together the Zoom and those people watching now, I'm sitting here watching behind Kathy, and she has some of the most beautiful scenery. And behind me, as you can tell, I'm not technical. Okay, I have blinds behind me. So.
Well, I can't take credit for that. We were on one of our right at home calls that I remember Mike Steiner from Grays Lake had these beach scene. I'm like, where did you get that, Mike? And so further meetings, different people had different scenery. Like, oh, you can change that. So I went on and got some videos and plastered them together. I said, well, at least it'll make me feel peaceful when I look at this.
There we go. And it's making me feel peaceful too, because I love the water and the tropics. So. When we're feeling grief, there's a physical pain, and I'm sure so many people, when they turn on the news, literally they feel this pain, and it's this this angst in your stomach of what's going on. What's going on? When is this going to end? Okay, our mind starts racing. I've noticed. In my wife's and mine relationship, as we watch each other go through this, we can tell when we're in the middle of a stress event that may probably have nothing to do with what the reality is right now. It has to do with what's going on all around us. Anticipatory grief is the mind going to the future and imagining the worst. Have you all felt that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's when's it going to get back to normal? But another thing that I see a lot of people, I have a friend right now that I'm a little bit worried about because I don't know where he's getting his information, but I'm very concerned about him because some of the stuff, the conspiracy theories, are not rational. Now, we have to find out what's going on, but he's not acting rational. He's over the top. So you can name 5 things to calm yourself. You want to come into the present. Okay, so how do we do that? You can name 5 things in the room. There's a computer, a chair, a picture of the dog. I have 2, an old rug, and a coffee mug. It's that simple. Breathe. Realize that you're in the present moment. Nothing you've anticipated has happened. In this moment, you're okay. You have food, plenty of it. And guess what? We all have plenty of toilet paper and paper towels.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Yes, we do. We're stocked up. Okay. The desk is hard. The blanket is soft. I can feel and breathe. you can also think about how to let go of what you can't control.
That's hard.
Now I have my faith, and Kath, I know you have your faith to
Yep.
do that. We believe God is in control. He knows what's going on. So what your neighbor is doing is out of control. Now I just described that, okay?
Yeah.
And a friend,
Yeah.
okay, what is in your control is staying 6 feet away from them and washing your hands. Focus on that. Finally, it's a good time to stock up on compassion. And boy, thank you, church, because we've created an outreach, and we have never had, since the inception of the church, the response of giving that has taken place.
Wow.
And it is such a great thing to take part of. It's such the doctor had mentioned before, to be or who was it, Buddha, being thankful.
Yep.
Okay. You have to find some way to be joyous and thankful in this environment, and you can do that by helping other people become thankful and joyous by giving.
Right. So true. Yeah.
So one particularly troubling aspect of this pandemic is the whole endedness of it. And we can see probably some of the frustration today on the news with what else is going on. It's just like, hey, what's next? Okay, we're totally out of control. But you know what? We're in control. And if we focus on ourselves and focus on what we can control, the better off we'll be. Mr. Kessler talks about the 6th stage of grief. He says, I did not want to stop at acceptance when I experienced some personal grief. I wanted meaning in those darkest hours. And I do believe we find light in those times. And I agree with him. Even now, people are realizing that they can connect through technology. They are not as remote as they thought. They are realizing that they can use their phones for long conversations. They're appreciating walks. I prefer fishing. And I believe we will continue to find meaning now and when this is over. And I agree with him 100%.
Jim, I know I come from a large family, and as many large families do, kind of as the generations fall away, the ones that are left are geographically dispersed, and we don't get together a lot. But I've had some great conversations with nieces and nephews that I really hadn't talked deeply with for a long time, and they just call out of the blue, or I'll call them out of the blue, or text each other. It's been wonderful. That's all I can say.
It has, and it has been great. I have a nephew that I haven't seen for years for one reason or another, and within the last week, he's been over fishing with me twice, and it was just great to get connected with him.
That's a blessing, yeah. So he says, what do you do when people kind of, like read his book or read articles on grief and, they're still feeling overwhelmed. And he said one unfortunate byproduct, and I think this is true, he's true about that, is in our self-help generation, we're the first generation to have feelings about our feelings. I don't think my parents or grandparents or prior to that, they analyzed things the way we analyze things today. They just didn't. They didn't analyze life. And so, I feel sad, but I shouldn't feel that. Other people have it worse. We can and we should stop at the first feeling. I feel sad. Just for 5 minutes, just feel sad, and move through it. That's what he points out. Your work is to feel your sadness and fear and anger, whether or not someone else is feeling something. Accept that this is just the way I feel. Don't stress over it, Fighting it doesn't help because, your body is producing the feelings, so just deal with it. If we allow that to happen in an orderly way, then we just kind of move through it and we're not victims. And that is so true. We worry, like you wake up at night worried about something, you start worrying about, I've got to get up in the morning, I got to get to sleep. Well, then it all just feeds on itself, and then you don't get to sleep. It's all, sometimes you just have to feel the feeling and accept that's the way it is. And so
exactly. Otherwise, you're going to feel like a rat on one of those wheels, just running and running and running.
So true, Jim. So true. And he says, somebody asked in an orderly way. And he said, yeah, sometimes we try not to feel what we're feeling because we have this image of this gang of feelings are going to kind of overwhelm us and incapacitate us. And if I feel sad and let it in, it'll never go away. But he says the gang of bad feelings won't overrun you. And the truth is, as you move through them, we'll feel it and go on to the next feeling. There's no gang out there that's going to incapacitate us if we'll just deal with things as they come up. It's absurd to think, he says, that we shouldn't feel grief right now. Let yourself feel it and keep going. And that's accept this is the grief we're in, and we have every right to feel that way. And that is so true.
And I agree with what the doctor says. You have to feel it. I remember growing up, and I'm sure some of our citizens that are just a little bit older than I may be. I'm going to be 65 this month.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Medicare.
Uh-huh.
But I'm going to be 65, and those people that are just a little generation behind me weren't taught feelings. And it took me a long time to figure out feelings are okay.
Yeah.
And even to identify what kind of feelings you had. I had no idea. There were 100 different feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And once you start thinking about it, you have them. And if you start talking about them, they're not as bad or not as scary as you make them.
Right. That's so true. So true, Jim.
So, Kath, great job putting this together.
Thank you, Jim.
We want to say thank you to our audience, those are listeners. We hope the information that we provided today have been helpful and will get you through to the next step. Remember to stay in contact with everybody. When you're sheltering in place, don't become recluse. Right, Kath?
Right.
So today's show is being sponsored by Right at Home. Our customized care plans provide as much or as little help as your loved one requires, whether it's a bath, a lift to the doctor, or just being around the house with some companionship. Call us today, Right at Home, at 877-ELDER-99. That's 877-353-3799. Kath, you want to take us out?
Yeah. Thank you all so much for joining us for today's show. And we hope you enjoyed this discussion on grief and COVID-19. And Jim and Jeanette and I will be back at a later date to talk about other things. Take care.